Hey everybody, I'm Rob Childs, a Rapier swordsman out of the United States, and if you're a subscriber to this public YouTube channel, then chances are better than fair that you already know that I also have a Patreon exclusive fencing instructional video channel whereby I share my experience, update videos for the castle, instructionals that you can't get on the public YouTube channel with regards to fencing as a skill set overall. Well, my subscribers have been submitting some questions to me, and they've been very helpful in helping me to guide the tutorials that I've been releasing to them. And most recently, one of them actually submitted 3 different questions, one of which I found was actually of a wider applicability across the fencing community overall. And today, I wanted to share that with you. This subscriber's question was actually sparked after they had read my book, Revelations of Rapier, because in it, I talk about the importance of not having patterns in your style of fence. Now, their specific question itself reads as such. For the concept of breaking patterns, you mentioned having a favorite parry. Though I understand knowing different options to defend against a single attack can be helpful, isn't it more important to practice a single parry for a single attack consistently so one can pull it off always reliably instead of having too many other options that probably won't be used? It's a very good question. And for any student out there of mine who has studied with me for even a short period of time, you have likely heard me say once, if not multiple times, that the most difficult swordsman that you are ever going to face is the dynamic swordsman. That means this is the swordsman for whom you cannot predict what they are going to do. What they showed you just a moment before is not going to be what they show you in the next. If you attack them and they defended themselves a certain way, the next time you attack them to that area, they're going to defend a different way. This kind of a swordsman makes it infinitely more difficult for you to defeat precisely because you cannot rely upon what came before in order to determine what the outcome will be in the present. When it comes to this particular subscriber's question, is it not good to have one particular parry in answer to one particular kind of attack? And the answer is no. Now, it's great if you have a parry that you have practiced 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 times. You've practiced it to the point where it is utter perfection in its execution. That's great. And it's something that you definitely want to have in your repertoire and your skill set. However, if that is always how you answer a particular attack, I'm telling you, that is a pattern, and patterns by their very nature are meant to be broken. Take, for example, if you were fencing against me. If my opponent was to present the exact same defense every time I attack them, let's say, for example, I attack them to the upper right quadrant of the body, and they always answer in what I call a parry 6 position. And if I attack them again and they answer in that same parry 6 position, if I pick up, and I will fairly quickly, that this opponent has a pattern, this is what they like to use every single time I attack this area of the body, well, guess what I'm going to do the next time I attack that area of the body? I'm going to, as you probably already guessed, I will present, they will start to move into that parry, I will disengage it, and I will hit them on the other side of the body. It is precisely because of the pattern that they presented to me that I then changed and gave them what they wanted. And as soon as they saw it, they thought, here comes my perfect execution of a parry. That's great, but I'm not actually going to that part of your body anymore. Now let's say that particular opponent that I am fencing against isn't the kind of person who is presenting me that pattern. When I present my attack to that upper right quadrant of their body, they parry one way. And then maybe they attack me back, I parry and riposte, and nothing happens of it. But then I attack them again in that same quadrant of the body, looking for that potential pattern, but instead my opponent parries an entirely different way, which of course draws my sword during that parry into a different position. I am forced to now have to adapt on the fly to what my opponent is doing in the midst of the fast action instead of having foreknowledge of what that person is going to do. And I'm telling you right now, that's a whole different kind of contest that you are engaging with. It is fencing in the truest sense of the word, but nonetheless, because my opponent is not presenting that pattern, I am not able to rely upon it, and therefore I cannot guarantee that information is going to be my path to victory. I have to take advantage of the mistakes my opponents make in the moment, rather than knowing ahead of time what that mistake will be. A classic example of this very thing I'm talking about comes from a fight practice that I went to on the East Coast when I was stationed at Arlington, Virginia a short while ago. I went to that local fight practice. I was fencing with one of their individuals there, and he was one of their better fencers, and we were having a great time. A lot of technique was coming out, and at the end of all of it, he stopped and he said, I just figured out why you are so difficult. He said, it's because you have an equally strong and different answers for the exact same attack that I present. What he's talking about is that he didn't have a pattern he could rely upon. Therefore, his extension disengaged lunge that he had planned on doing because he thought he knew what the parry was going to be didn't end up working out because I used an entirely different parry that countered his disengage in the first place. If you are that dynamic swordsman, this is exactly the kind of challenge you present to every single person that you fence. So to my Patreon subscriber, I answer you this way. Yeah, it is great if you have a parry that you have practiced so many times that it is practically flawless in its execution. That's good to have, and it's, something that everybody should strive for. But by itself, it is woefully insufficient. If you have but one answer to every time your opponent attacks a specific area, say, for example, they attack me in the upper right quadrant, and I always answer the exact same way every time. How long do you think it's going to take my opponent to pick up on that pattern? And then once they do, what do you think is going to be their response? Of course, it's going to be to change, and not just simply attacking a different part of the body entirely, but to present in that area that triggers my picture-perfect parry, but then, of course, they disengage and strike me on the other side of my body. Or they lead me down a pathway where I'm thinking of one timing, and they actually attack me in another. The whole point behind it is that if you present the pattern, your opponent will break it, and that is how they will ultimately defeat you. Now, as I said, it is great if you have a parry that you have practiced so often that it is flawless, that it's absolutely perfect when you use it. However, as I've already discussed, since that by itself is not enough, would it not then be good that if my opponent attacks in my upper right quadrant, that I have a picture-perfect answer for it, and then the next time they attack that quadrant, I have another picture-perfect answer, equally strong, that enables me to be able to defend myself just as well? Well, this is now leading you down the path of being the dynamic swordsman. If you don't present a pattern, your opponent doesn't know what to expect, and now you're forcing them to have to answer you, the swordsman, in the moment. They are having to make their decisions in those split-second timings that is determining who and who doesn't make the last mistake. But I completely deny myself that opportunity if I do indeed only have one answer for the exact same attack every time. So, when I am fencing, I will answer one way, and then I will answer another, and then I will answer yet a third time. If there are 4 really great options, equally strong, none of which are wasting time, I will learn and master all 4 of those in order to use them while I am fencing against my opponent. This is, by definition, the dynamic swordsman, and if that dynamic swordsman is you, you're going to be one of the most difficult people I am ever going to fence. There is a plethora of swordsmen out there who, to one degree or another, to greater degree or lesser, they have these patterns in their fence. They have this in their expression of the art. And the sooner that you can change that from being something of a pattern, from being something of a favorite parry, to having a preferred attack, the sooner you can get to a point where you have multiple equally comfortable and equally effective options, the harder you are going to be as a swordsman, and the greater your overall success is going to be. As always, if you have any questions about anything I've said today, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. You can do so on the YouTube channel that you're watching now. You can do so on Facebook. I am not difficult to find, and I'm more than happy to help out where I can.